In a world torn apart by the Cold War, as superpowers vied for global dominance, one nation at the southern tip of Africa became the unlikely epicenter of a worldwide struggle. This wasn't just a story about race. It was a battle of ideology, power, and survival. And at the heart of this storm was a man locked away for 27 years, a prisoner who would become a global icon. His name was Nelson Mandela. How did a man in a prison cell manage to dismantle a system of oppression, all while caught in the crossfire of the Cold War? To understand this incredible story, we have to go back to 1948. While the world was rebuilding after World War II, South Africa was building walls. The National Party came to power with a single chilling ideology: apartheid. This wasn't just simple segregation. It was a meticulously engineered system designed to ensure the absolute power of the white minority. Laws were passed that classified every single person by race. Where you could live, what job you could have, who you could marry, it was all dictated by the color of your skin. The black majority, over 80% of the population, were stripped of their citizenship and basic human rights, becoming foreigners in their own land. But why did the world, particularly the West, stand by and let this happen? The answer lies in the Cold War. The fear of communism spreading across Africa was paramount. The Soviet Union was actively supporting anti-colonial movements. So from the perspective of Washington, in London, the staunchly anti-communist government in Pretoria, no matter how brutal, seemed like a necessary if unpleasant ally. Into this deeply divided world, a young lawyer named Nelson Mandela emerged. Initially, he believed in non-violent resistance, inspired by leaders like Gandhi. Along with his comrades in the African National Congress, or ANC, he organized boycotts, strikes, and protests. But everything changed on March 21, 1960, in the township of Sharpeville. Police opened fire on a peaceful crowd protesting the passed laws, killing 69 people. The Sharpeville massacre was a brutal wake-up call. It convinced Mandela and the ANC that peaceful protest alone was not enough. The regime only understood the language of force. In response, they formed Umkhonto we Sizwe, the Spear of the Nation, an armed wing dedicated to strategic sabotage against the state. This move immediately put them on the radar of Western intelligence. Declassified documents later revealed that the CIA was viewing the ANC as a potential communist proxy, actively monitored the group, and even provided the tip that led to Mandela's arrest in 1962. For the West, Mandela wasn't a freedom fighter. He was a potential threat in their global chess match against the Soviets. As the Cold War intensified, Africa became a key battleground. The continent was a proxy war theater. The Soviet Union and its allies funneled weapons and training to liberation movements in Angola, Mozambique, and Namibia, seeing a chance to gain allies and resources. The United States, in turn, backed anti-communist regimes and rebel groups, often propping up brutal dictatorships to keep the red tide at bay. South Africa played a crucial role in this dynamic. Its powerful military intervened directly in neighboring countries, fighting proxy wars against Soviet-backed forces. In the eyes of Western policymakers, the apartheid regime was a critical bulwark against communist expansion in southern Africa. This strategic alignment gave the Pretoria government a shield, allowing it to continue its oppressive policies at home with little fear of serious international consequences. The fight for black liberation was tragically framed as a communist plot. Back in South Africa, Mandela and his fellow ANC leaders were put on trial for sabotage in the infamous Rivonia trial. Facing the death penalty, Mandela delivered one of the most powerful speeches of the 20th century from the dock. He declared, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." He was spared execution, but sentenced to life in prison. He was sent to the notorious Robben Island, a barren rock in the Atlantic. The conditions were brutal hard labor in a lime quarry, tiny cells, and total isolation from the outside world. The government's goal was to break his spirit and erase him from memory, but they failed. Mandela's silence from his prison cell began to scream louder than any speech he could have given. He became a living symbol of the struggle, a martyr whose moral authority only grew with each passing year of his incarceration. While Mandela was imprisoned, the world began to awaken. The Free Nelson Mandela movement became a global phenomenon. Students on university campuses in America and Europe demanded divestment from companies doing business in South Africa. Musicians from around the world organized massive concerts. With songs like Free Nelson Mandela becoming international anthems for justice, the United Nations imposed arms embargoes and economic sanctions, slowly tightening the screws on the regime. Even within the West, public opinion turned decisively against apartheid. The moral bankruptcy of supporting such a system became impossible to ignore. This global pressure, a combination of cultural boycotts, economic sanctions, and grassroots activism, turned South Africa into a pariah state. The regime was becoming increasingly isolated, both economically and politically. Then came the geopolitical earthquake that changed everything. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the subsequent collapse of the Soviet Union. Suddenly, the entire ideological foundation for Western support of the apartheid regime evaporated. The communist threat that had been used to justify decades of complicity was gone, without the Cold War to hide behind. The South African government stood exposed for what it was, a racist and unsustainable system. At the same time, years of economic sanctions and the immense cost of maintaining the apartheid apparatus had crippled the country's economy. The regime was bankrupt, both morally and financially. They had run out of excuses and out of money. The choice was stark: negotiate or face a devastating civil war. The pressure was immense. In a stunning move, President F.W. de Klerk unbanned the ANC and other liberation movements. And on February 11, 1990, after 27 years, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison a free man. The world watched, captivated, as the man who had become a global symbol of resistance emerged, not with bitterness, but with a message of reconciliation. He began intense negotiations with de Klerk to dismantle apartheid and chart a path to a new democratic South Africa. The process was fraught with danger and violence, but Mandela's leadership and moral stature held the country together. In 1994, South Africa held its first ever multiracial elections. Millions of black South Africans, many of whom were elderly and had lived their entire lives without rights, lined up for hours to cast their first vote. Nelson Mandela was overwhelmingly elected president. The prisoner had become the president, and a new nation was born. The legacy of Nelson Mandela is immense. He not only led his country out of the darkness of apartheid, but also provided the world with a powerful model of forgiveness and reconciliation. He showed that it was possible to dismantle a system of oppression without descending into a cycle of revenge. His story demonstrates how a single individual's unwavering conviction can inspire a global movement and change the course of history, even from behind the walls of a prison cell. He navigated the treacherous currents of the Cold War and emerged as a beacon of hope, not just for Africa, but for all of humanity. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey through history meaningful, please consider liking this video, sharing it with others, and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. We'll see you in the next one.